Hello, and welcome to Way Too Serious, the show where we get way too serious and spend way too much time talking about things that just really don't matter. In our first part of Kevin Smith, we got way too serious and talked way too much about that, and we're still here to talk some more. And back with me are my brother Tony.
What up?
And my brother Andy.
Hey.
And hopefully you listened to part one. Hopefully you're joining us here for part two. And we're going to get into, we talked ViewAskewinverse in part one. We're going to get into the other stuff, and we're just going to start with the other films that he's done outside the ViewAskew universe. And since it's fairly new in theaters, and we all saw it, let's kick it off with Tusk. Like I said, it's new in theaters. It's directed by Kevin Smith, written by Kevin Smith. And it stars Justin Long, Haley Joel Osment, and the guy from Red State.
Michael Parks.
I just have to say, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I watched. Can someone explain what I watched? How about it, guys? Tell me what I watched.
Someone online, I'm sorry, I don't know the quote or who quoted this, but someone said it's the movie equivalent of a dare. Like, I dare you to make a movie about this.
Well, I do know that it came, and Tony, you're the Smodcast expert. This came from them talking, him and Scott Mosier, who, we probably really should have mentioned him in the View Askew part.
He gets no credit in any world, so why should we give him any,
But didn't this come up from something they were talking about on a podcast? Why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, they just kind of went on a rant talking, not like specifics, but a little bit about this, a little bit about that, as far as this guy that turns people into walruses. And then he was like, well, if you think this would be a good movie, do on Twitter hashtag walrus yes or hashtag walrus no. And he got a crap ton of hashtag walrus yes. And then
I can't believe Kevin Smith fans would blindly buy into anything that he said. That does not sound like the Kevin Smith fans I know.
It doesn't seem very thought out.
Well, I have problems with this movie, obviously. I don't know who wouldn't. But I have an even bigger problem that it's part of a trilogy. That there's going to be two.
Yeah, I saw that. And I was like, wow, are you kidding me?
So,
I know you said you'll see anything Kevin Smith does out of loyalty. I won't see those movies.
I'm not familiar. Can someone fill me in on this?
There's going to be two more movies.
One of them's called Moose Jaws, I think, and it's essentially Jaws, but with a moose.
That's the third part.
Yeah,
the second one is going to feature the clerks in the store, which was
his daughter and
Johnny Depp's daughter. Yeah. Which, by the way, the whole time I'm watching that, I'm like, who is that? I know who that is. That's somebody. Who is that playing the inspector? I didn't find out till I got home and looked it up on Wikipedia. That was Johnny Depp.
Yeah, it blew me away, too. I thought it was Josh Radnor. I think that's his name. He plays Ted on How I Met Your Mother. And I was like, wow, he's really good in this. Like,
for about a minute and a half, I thought it was Val Kilmer.
I did, too. That's what I thought. For the first minute, I thought it was Val Kilmer. I did, yeah. And I did not figure out it was Johnny Depp till I got home and looked it up. That blew my mind. But
well, I remembered hearing that he had done a movie with Johnny Depp. I just didn't even realize this was it. But it was kooky, so I don't know. I should have picked up on it, and I didn't. But I do want to say about this movie is I really did like the characters, and I really did. Can I say something? I really did think it was well acted. I would have rather watched these characters do anything. I love the idea of their podcast. I think that they could have done so much fun stuff with that, and instead they just... It gets ridiculous, and it looks goofy, and the reveal of Justin Long in this walrus costume is one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in a long time.
That's what I don't get. Am I supposed to laugh at this movie? Is it supposed to be funny?
It doesn't tell you what it wants you to do, if it wants you to take it seriously or if it wants you to think it's a joke. I never could figure out where it wanted me to go.
And yeah, I mean, I didn't know if there was a moral to this story, or because just his character. I mean, he's kind of a dick, but not.
No.
But not
he's annoying, and then you find out on top of being annoying, he's also a bad person.
But he's not but enough for this to happen to him. He's not that big of a jerk.
Well, did you like the way that they revealed that they didn't show you like complete scenes at the beginning, and then they go back and show you that he is a bigger dick than you thought he was?
Okay, but I mean that was cool. But before they just show he's this real annoying guy that you wish someone would torture, and they actually do end up torturing him, and then you're like, Well, I didn't really enjoy that as much as I thought when I was like, man, I really wish someone would torture that guy because he's so annoying.
Well, they could say the same about. I mean, we're all kind of jerks too. But do we deserve to be turned into? I mean,
I guess
a
in
walrus?
Curtis's
I don't
eyes,
think so.
I've never
And
wished
that's
that upon
where
anyone.
I was, yeah, he's a jerk, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't agree. Like, Curtis is ridiculous there. I wouldn't wish this upon anyone. It's terrible. And Michael Parks is really believable that he wants to turn these people into walruses. I don't know. I think he did a good job there.
This is the same guy who plays the Fred Phelps. Is that the guy's name from the Westboro Baptist Church?
Something close. I think that's close.
He plays that character in Red State, and he's good in both of these. He's about the only good thing in both of these, but we'll talk about Red State later. Yeah, I did believe that he wanted to turn this guy into a walrus. That's about the only thing I believed in this movie. Everything else, I just had no clue. I don't like, and look, I always like to say, you can do anything well. I don't want to tell someone they can't do something, because if you do it well, you can blow my mind and say, wow, even though I said you could never do that, you did it, and it was great. But I always don't like when movies just don't have like what you said, where it just didn't tell you what it wanted you to think or what it wanted you to do. I don't like that. I don't care for that. I want a movie to show me what it wants to do, and then I will judge how well it did it. And I have no clue what this movie wanted to do.
It had commitment issues.
It was almost like sorry, Tom.
The movie definitely had commitment issues.
Yeah. To me, it was just almost like a big fuck you to like the indie film. It's just there's so many indie people that have their projects that they want to put out, and I mean, he's just like he could just wipe his ass and then just make a movie about whatever the hell he felt like making a movie that week.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say this because I ended part one on a big thing about how much I love Kevin Smith because of those movies. I don't like most of the stuff we're going to talk about here in part two, and I don't think not all of it's bad. Some of it is, some of it's not bad, some of it I just don't care for. What I am going to say to do that, part of laying it out here for part two, is, look, I respect the hell out of Kevin Smith. While I don't like everything he does, this is a guy who has made it himself almost 100%. This is a guy who's doing what he loves to do. He is making a lot of people happy, even though a lot of them, in my opinion, are just sycophants. But he makes a lot of people happy. He's doing what he loves to do. He works very hard. So I had nothing but mad love and respect for Big Kev Smith, even when he makes something like this that I have no clue what it was. I wish I could go back and unsee it because it was just really weird and really just... It's not even bad per se. It's just like, why did I watch this? Why did I spend an hour and 45 minutes doing this? Like, why was this worth my time?
Yeah, I felt the same way. The only word that came to mind at leaving that theater was bizarre. It had some funny parts. It had some really visually interesting things, to say the least, but I didn't know what the moral was. I didn't know what we were supposed to take away from it, as y'all been saying. I just I don't know. I wish I had more of an opinion on this, but it was.
Yeah, I drove an hour and a half each way to go see this movie, and I can honestly say, like, I don't regret it. Like, I'm glad I saw it, but if I was recommending it to someone, and somebody did come to me the other day at work and say, "Hey, have you seen Tusk yet?" and I said, "You're a Kevin Smith fan, you should watch it," but I wouldn't drive 3 hours, both total, to go see it.
Wait till it's streaming on Netflix.
And even then, it's probably not going to be number one in your queue, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly.
But I totally disagree with Tony on the characters. Other than, again, the walrus guy, every character in this movie was annoying, and this is going to become a common theme in the movies we're going to talk about. It's like, after the View Askew movie, it's where he wrote all these great characters that I love, and they're super interesting. I just don't give a crap about so many of these characters. I don't care about them. They're not interesting to me. They're not funny, whether they're trying to be funny or not. And that was definitely the case for this movie. Like I said, I hated Justin Long character. Haley Joel, like, in the past, he could write people who had flaws, and they were still likable people. But now he writes all these people who are just like weirdos and scuzzbags that don't really have any positive traits to them that can make you relate to them or make you like them. I don't understand where he lost that ability.
I just completely disagree with that. Could not disagree with it more. Again, I really enjoyed these characters and would have rather watched them do anything else.
All right, we get 2 more movies to do that. Enjoy them, because I ain't watching them.
But yeah, I don't. I'm kind of with Kurtis on this one. But to me, there wasn't a place for them to have character development in this movie. It just, I don't know. You don't. I mean, it happens so quickly that you really don't really get to see how he gets. I got so many issues with this, and I don't know.
Again, my biggest issue is just like I don't know what I watched. I don't know why I watched it, and
who all was super just shocked and crapped their pants when they found out that the girlfriend's lover was actually the Haley Joel Osment character.
I never guessed who that hairy arm was in the earlier scene. Like, but that's what I said. All these people are bad people, and they just have like no redeeming qualities, really. So, but we're gonna talk about more about that as we go through these movies.
I do just want to say that it's shocking to me that y'all two, the reflection of perfection, would team up against me on this. I that's unlike y'all at all. So I'm ready to move on though.
So just what did you like about Justin Long's character? Did he have a podcast? Because you have a podcast, like that. Like other than that,
I thought he was.
I really did like the idea of the podcast. I liked. Or I guess I didn't like so much that Haley Joel Osment's character wouldn't go see these things, and that he would, because I dedicate myself to my podcast. And while there is one movie coming up in December that I've refused to watch, I've watched so many piles of crap. So I did relate on the podcast thing. But I don't know.
The podcasting part of it was interesting. I'll give you that. Did you see the mustache? Did you notice the mustache?
Well, you think I've never seen a bad mustache before?
I do. I want to bring up something. The flashbacks, were those supposed to look super cheesy? I mean, it looked like some sort of like ID reenactment or something.
I don't know. This whole movie was just super confusing to me, and then it was even more confusing when I got home and found out it was Johnny Depp in it. So.
Or when the kid cuts his leg off, that was so CG to me. I thought that was part of
I did too. I thought that was supposed to be fake. And I mean, they do explain that it's not supposed to be, but it looked so fake. And obviously the walrus suit looks fake. And like, why did they leave, spoiler alert, why did they leave him in it? Like, I mean, I understand like he was never going to be the same, but I mean, it's Canada. Maybe you could do that, but like, they just left him in it and was like, "Here you go, you're a walrus now," and they just left him there. That's what I'm saying. These are terrible people. These are terrible people. They have no redeeming qualities, and I don't like any of them. I think they're all awful, and I think they all should be turned into walruses.
I'll have to say that when they just showed up at that deserted zoo or whatever, and then just threw a fish down in a hole and then left. I mean.
Well, we have the same rule here as we have as Tony has on 22 June. We will spoil the movie for you if we don't think you should see the movie, and I don't think you should see this movie.
What are we spoiling? I mean, what is there to spoil?
I don't know. But
I mean,
we are giving away the end.
Exactly what you go into the movie to see is what happens, and nothing more.
All right, but we did kind of spoil that they just leave him a walrus.
Why could he not talk anymore, though?
He said he cut out his tongue.
Oh, okay.
They did say that.
Yeah, they did. But just since we're not doing this on my show, would you feel comfortable giving a 1 out of 5 rating on this, Kurtis?
I'd give it more than that.
I don't know. It's just like I said. I'm just so mad at the movie for wasting my time that again, I don't even think that it's terrible. I just think it's a waste of time. I know that doesn't totally mesh up, but
it does. I mean, if you've seen the movie, then it absolutely makes sense, I think.
So, I mean, I'd probably say 2, but it would be close to a 1. I wouldn't say go see it. The only reason I would say maybe 2 is because, like, I do think there are maybe a couple redeeming things. I do think that some people, even who aren't Kevin Smith fans, will like this. And I did see, like, some reviews of people, from critics, who did like it, although I believe it was mostly negative. I think it was 40-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, but some critics liked it.
See, I have a prediction that this will say, like, your son when he gets to be like in his teenage years or in college years, that him and his friends will like somehow find this movie, and it'll be like some kind of like cult thing. Oh, did you see that there's this Walrus movie?
Maybe so. It could be like that, and that's the only reason I maybe give it a 2 is because I could kind of see something like that happening.
Okay, that's fair. But Justin Long's mustache, how did you feel about that?
He's a sexy man.
I think I summed that up. All right. So the next movie we're going to talk about is we were going to go in order, but Red State relates to this movie so much, and I had actually never seen that movie either until we decided to do this, and I finally watched it.
Well, we had actually had a conversation about it, and I asked you, this was a couple years ago, I said, have you seen it? And you said no, and I said, well, I think anybody that's a true Kevin Smith fan should see it. You go, I don't know that I'm a Kevin Smith fan, which I just was bewildered by, but I'm glad.
I don't. If I said that, like, I was saying that, like, sarcastically because I hadn't seen it yet or something.
Okay, right.
I am a Kevin Smith fan because of what he did with those View Askew movies, and because I also appreciate him as a working man. But again, this movie has this same problem as Tusk in that, and that's why we're just going to go ahead and skip to it because it does relate to Tusk a lot, is the characters in this movie are all awful people who I don't care about, and that's why I didn't like this movie. The kids are slimeball kids, which, hey, lots of kids are. That's fun. I'm not saying that they weren't doing something some kids do, but there was no redeeming qualities to these kids other than they were weirdo scuzzbags. Obviously, the Westboro church people are terrible people who I don't relate to in any way. And all the cops, they were ATF, right? They're all terrible. They're all terrible people. I mean, the closest thing to a good person is John Goodman, and even he does terrible stuff in this movie. So there's no one in this movie is a person that I care about. And I will say this many times. I've said it before. As long as we're talking about movies on this podcast, you'll hear me say it many times. I care about characters more than anything else in a movie. It's not the end-all, be-all, but it's number one for me, and that's just my personal opinion. I've heard every story. I've seen every story except for Tusk. And so give me characters I care about, and I'll accept your cheese, your action sequences that I've seen 100 times, your CGI crap that doesn't impress me anymore. Give me characters I care about, and I did not care about one single person in this movie.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there, and I tend to agree with that. Though I do think it's well acted. Michael Parks again in this movie is super believable. But
that guy is great.
Just for me, this was something worth watching if you're a Kevin Smith fan. It's a really interesting take on his progression as a filmmaker, visually, and I just think what.
I'd agree with that.
Okay, and I think it has a total different look and feel and vibe, and it kind of advanced camera movements for him, and it's no Grand Budapest Hotel as far as camera movements, but it's a pretty big deal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I dug it. I don't know if I dug it, but I do like what he was doing, the way he was going. To me, it's a whole other voice, I think, than the Kevin Smith voice that you get from the View Askew. I think Tusk was a whole other voice that you don't really hear from Kevin Smith in his earlier films. I think it had more of a point, and I wanted to revisit this. I saw this once like a year ago, so it's not fresh in my brain, so I can't get into too much detail. But it really kind of takes you on a ride. And things happen that you don't expect to happen, and
well, that's what he said he was trying to do. If you watch Burn in Hell, he talks about he spends like this is like I think it's like an hour and a half special, and half of it is on this movie, and he spends it's way more interesting than the movie. But a part of it he talks about is when he wrote the script is he sat down writing this, and I do think the whole Westboro Church doing kind of a movie based on that type of thing is interesting. I don't think this was a good attempt at that, but what he did say is anytime he realized he knew where the story was going, he realized the audience would know where it was going, and therefore he would try to take it a different direction, which, hey, I totally respect that. And like I said, I always have a spot for guys who try to do something different, even if it doesn't work well. This didn't work for me, but it was super interesting, too, that not to distract from talking to the movie, but the real Westboro Baptist church people like came to see the movie and interacted with them and stuff, and that stuff was way more interesting than this. But to get back on case with the movie, sorry I interrupted you there, Andy.
No, I mean, I again, I wish I could have revisited it, but just from what I remember, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It took me a long time to kind of you would see it on Netflix and just like, oh, I'll watch that sometime, and you say that for a couple of years, and to finally get around to doing it, it's like, oh, I was kind of surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. I thought it was way better than Tusk.
Yeah, not even close.
To me, they're similar movies. Tusk, this is not as head-scratching and confusing and wasted my time as Tusk, but it's fairly close.
And for just like a standalone movie, I think, and I don't agree with Tone where he says that if you're a Kevin Smith fan, you have to watch it. In fact, I think that you could be a Kevin Smith fan and not watch it. But the fact that if you are a Kevin Smith fan and watch it, it gives you a new light into what he's capable of, or besides dick and fart jokes, where his brain and imagination can go. And
which is why, if you're a fan, you should watch it. I'm glad we agree on that.
Like I said, this just kind of continues my thing from Tusk, where I don't understand how he has all these characters that just are terrible people that I don't relate to in any way or find funny or have any redeeming quality. Again, total opposite of View Askew movies, where a lot of the characters were awful people, but you found ways to relate to them or ways to sympathize with them.
I just think in these movies, like I don't mean to clump this and Red State and Tusk into the same group, but I kind of do. I think that there's really not a whole lot of room for character development, because when you think about, like, you know, they see the ad in the paper, Craig, I can't remember exactly, and they go to that woman's house, and then like stuff happens almost immediately. That there's really no build up. There's really no relationships being formed.
There's ways to do it. Good filmmakers, which Kevin Smith is, he could find a way to make these characters do
Curtis would have done it
you
better. He's right.
What's that?
Curtis would have done it better. He's right. You would have made this movie super watchable and one of the top 5 in the AFI, I'm sure.
Well, I know Joss Whedon, he has a way of killing off like the lovable characters, and to me it's just like Kevin knows that he's killing these people off, so he doesn't want to invest too much of his time into giving them personalities. This is just skepticism as far as where his mind's going, but most of the time his characters live in his movie, and therefore they have more of a personality.
Again, I appreciate what he was trying to do here with the taking it, but that's not my thing. My thing is good characters. This movie doesn't have them. That doesn't mean I could write a better movie. You're allowed to have a negative opinion of a movie or criticize a movie without being a Martin Scorsese. I know that's what Tony just said, but that'll be my response to anything Tony says negative about any movie now. And it's like, oh, okay, Marty Scorsese.
All right, fair enough. But I just want to say, like, I don't lump these two movies in together, other than they're a little darker than the stuff he normally makes. Because, again, this one doesn't deviate from that. It's supposed to be a serious movie. It gives you a clear vision of what it wants you to feel, unlike Tusk did. And while neither of them are just amazing, great movies, this one is head over heels, far and above better than Tusk.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said. That not that it's far and wide better, but that this one doesn't like confuse you. It does let you know what it wants to do and what it wants to be. So I will give you that.
I think people should watch it. I think it's a movie worth watching. Tusk, I think if you have kind of a twisted sense of humor, you might want to watch it. But I think that this movie is absolutely qualified to not just throw away and toss to the side. I think it's worth watching.
All right. So those were his most recent movies. We got 3 other Kevin Smith movies to talk about, and let's start with the first non-View Askew movie after Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, but before Clerks 2, 2004 Jersey Girl. And Tony and I talked a little bit about this on 22MW, the backstory behind it, but basically Ben Affleck wanted to recreate the kind of what the Chasing Amy feel was, and this was the movie that they came up with. And then when that didn't work, he ripped off Chasing Amy and made the town, but that's another story. I'm just gonna go ahead.
I really think that Tone should start this one off because I know that for a fact that Tone has always enjoyed this movie. At least you used to anyway.
All right. You go ahead and start us off.
So we don't need to get your negative comments.
You rewatched for this, right?
Oh, gladly. This is my favorite Kevin Smith film, and that makes me catch crap or whatever because so many people hate it. But the majority of people that hate this movie haven't even seen it. They just hate it because they're like, "Oh, it's just like Geely." I don't know how many times I've heard that in my lifetime. Jennifer Lopez is in this movie. She's great in this movie, but she's in it for a total of like 15 freaking minutes. But the character relationship between the grandfather George Carlin. Ben Affleck, the father, and the daughter, the Jersey girl, Raquel Castro, their interactions are great. It's a great family environment that they create. There's some really funny stuff going on. They do this bit with Will Smith. Love that. And I don't know, it's just a super sweet, great movie. He did it for his dad, and I can't say enough good things about this movie.
So here's my thing. I saw this when it first came out, and I didn't like it. Didn't think it was the worst thing I ever saw, but didn't care for it. And, maybe had some of those negative comments kind of seep in, and maybe I let that judge. I went back and watched it. This is the first time I'd seen it since then. And I still don't think it's that great. Here's where I will agree with Tony. The Carlin, Affleck, little girl interactions are all great. They are. George Carlin is fantastic in this. He is really, really good. Like, he's not just George Carlin in this like he is in all his stand-up and even some of the other Kevin Smith movies he's been in. He is really good in this. Like, that was the number one thing I took away from this is forgetting how amazing he was in this movie. And even though I didn't think Ben Affleck was very good in it, I did think his interactions with the girl who played his daughter were. When two of the most important scenes in this movie, I won't say they're the most important, but where the real acting would have came out. One, when he finds out his wife died, and two, when he gives the speech before the town. In both cases, they had to not show what he was. They had to cut the sound. So Ben Affleck was not good in this movie. That showed you he wasn't good in this movie. Look, I actually think Ben Affleck's come a long way as an actor. The guy makes some great movies directing-wise, so I'm not a flat hater anymore. I loved him in Chasing Amy. He was not good in this movie. The fact that they had to do that in those two important scenes really shows he wasn't good in this movie. Liv Tyler, show me anything she's ever been good in. Did she finally stop getting jobs, I hope? Because she is not good.
I think she still gets like horror movie jobs, but I do want to say something about those two scenes, and I don't think those are the two most important scenes in the movie, but I do have a problem with the second one where he's supposed to be this silver-tongued devil, and you don't hear it. And
it's Kevin Smith writing it. Yeah. He writes great dialogue.
Never understood why that was that way.
They had to cut away from him crying when he finds out his wife died. They just had to show him because they had to cut it out because they had to cut the sound because
Affleck can cry. Affleck cries in that movie a couple of times, and I think he's a good crier. That one maybe works, maybe doesn't, but the other one is kind of a joke. I agree. I
would agree. Like the one where the crying is just, I got it. Just physically, he doesn't have to spell it out for you. His wife just died giving birth. Yeah, we get it. So to back off and kind of leave some mystery there was okay. But yeah, when the town where he's just he's got to be right. I mean, you saw Boiler Room and he does a good kind of.
I know. Even though I didn't think he was good in this, I thought he could have pulled it off. So I don't know. That really confuses me.
It did. It frustrated me to no end. But I don't know. Is it my turn, or do you want to say anything else, John?
Go ahead.
Okay. To me, this was not near as bad as people make it out to be. Still, nothing special. Just to say that it's the next Chasing Amy. I mean, that's just the furthest thing that I could. I mean, to even compare it to that is just bizarre to me. And was it a fun little romantic comedy? Yeah, sure, and like we said, George Carlin was amazing in this. I don't know if Stephen Root just didn't have anything to do for a month or so, but his character is so small. I just don't. I mean, that really bugged me. That maybe it was bigger, but it just, for a guy of that talent to have such a dinky little part, it was insulting.
Yeah, I did go back and kind of look at all the hate this movie got, and it doesn't deserve it. It's not that bad. It's a cute little movie. It's got its problems. A lot of the performances aren't that great. I just totally didn't buy the Liv Tyler Affleck part, even though I've seen them before together. It's just, she's so terrible, and he's not good in this. The little girl is good. Carlin is great. Decent enough.
Yeah, I have to say, I'll give it. I don't know if I was just one of those moods. Sometimes I can just get into like a sappy little mood, and where things just kind of pull on my heartstrings a little more. But when he was, when she's in the crib and he's trying to feed her like for 2 seconds and then just leaves anyway. But that little speech to the baby in the crib, that kind of spoke to me a little bit. I don't know.
Like I said, I thought that Tony nailed it. The interactions with Carlin and Affleck and the girl, and even Carlin and the girl, all that is really good stuff. But it's not enough to carry some not so good performances, some not so great supporting characters, and a mediocre story. The whole end part is super cheesy, and again, we've talked about cheese in part one, and so here it didn't work for me. It just seemed, there was totally opposite of Red State, where he was like, I want to go the total. You smelt this coming from miles away, what was going to happen. He was going to go to the interview, and he was going to leave. They did throw the nice little Will Smith thing in there, which was kind of funny. But this is not. This is like saying that Dark Knight Rises is the best of the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy. Just absolutely ludicrous.
Ridiculous. Okay. I mean, like I said, most people don't agree with me. At least y'all have seen the movie and disagree, as opposed to most people and have not seen the movie and disagree.
And I'm not even saying it's a bad movie. I mean, it's not a movie that I would rewatch, because it's a romantic comedy and it's kind of cliche in a lot of ways, but not bad.
But as Curtis said, like, besides Tusk, haven't we seen every kind of story that's all about
absolutely. And this one is just on par with any other cheesy romantic comedy.
And I was with you the first time you watched it, Andy, and I remember that you really enjoyed it. So I know how you really feel.
I rewatched it last night.
You're with Curtis, and you have to kind of team up with him. It's been going on for years.
I'm saying good things about this movie. I mean, I never said that this was the best movie under the sun.
Well, if you say anything short of that, then that means that you think it's absolute crap, and you gotta call yourself Marty Scorsese.
Going into this, I was like, I remember kind of like thinking this movie was okay before, and then when I watched it, I'm like, yeah, this movie's kind of okay. Okay. And it is.
All right. Okay.
All right.
I loved it.
I do want to say one more.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous. Tony thinks this is his favorite Kevin Smith movie, but that's what it is. Tony's entitled to his opinion.
Thank you for that entitlement. But one more thing about this movie I want to talk about is the music, and I think this goes for a lot of Kevin Smith movies. I don't think he gets credit for the music he uses to tell his stories. And this movie has George Strait in it, has the Boss in it. It just has, George Jones rather. It just has lots of great music that really helped me put me in this environment. And
I would probably disagree. Some of it took me out.
I don't even remember the music. So normally I would agree with what you said with a lot of his movies, but not this.
But this particular movie, some of it, not all of it, some of it worked, but some of it just took me out. It almost seemed a little dated a couple of times.
But you're a little bit of a music snob, and I guess maybe like every time a new movie comes out, you want Chad Kroeger to do the big song for it. I'm just not that kind of guy.
All right. We beat each other up. We beat each other up over Jersey Girl as much as we can. Next up, 2008, Zack and Miri Make a Porno. I don't have a lot to say about this movie. I didn't rewatch it just because it wasn't easily available, and I saw this when it came out, and maybe seen it once since then, and got some laughs. It's decent enough. Again, didn't really care about the characters that much. Rogen and Banks were good enough, I suppose, but there was nothing really that special about them that really made me buy into this movie. Just a so forgettable kind of movie to me.
For me, this is one of those movies, like, if you had high anticipation for it and couldn't wait to go see it opening night, you were probably let down. But if you stumbled upon it 3 years later on TBS, you were probably like, okay, this is somewhat enjoyable. As I kind of mentioned on the last episode, Kevin Smith says he lost touch going into this movie, and that he couldn't relate with people that were having struggles with money and stuff like that. And I think all that kind of shows in this movie. It has its funny parts. It has some really good actors in it. But just nothing special here.
And I didn't revisit it. I wanted to, but just didn't have the time to. But I've seen it about 2 or 3 times, I guess. And, always, enjoyable at the very least. I can't really put it on any kind of pedestal or anything like that, but enjoyable for what it is. Again, I think at certain points it gets really kind of cheesy, that maybe you need that for a movie with this kind of content, that you need that cheese to kind of counteract with the subject matter or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. God, I wish I had like strong opinions on some of these later movies, because what I mean, for the listeners at least, to be like, oh, yeah, this is a movie,
Hey, I gotta shoot straight. I mean, I know some people like to dial up the anger or dial up the love on stuff on the internet, whether it's YouTube or podcasting or whatever, but that's not really how we do it here. If it's just okay, we just say it was okay. So
yeah, and I think I at least appreciate his honesty that he was trying to make a Judd Apatow film, and I think he now understands that that's not really his bag, and I think maybe he doesn't know what his bag is, and that's why he said, like, he was going to make his 10th movie, which was going to be Clerks 3, and then he was going to call it a day, and it didn't play out that way. But I think maybe that's why he's kind of making stuff like Tusk. He just doesn't know what kind of director he's supposed to be anymore.
But to me, on that note, I just think that, like, yeah, what's the point then? I mean, that's what I ask with Tusk, is what's the point in making this movie? I mean, it took a lot of money. It took a whole film crew to get together and band together to create this thing. And was it worth it? I mean, at the end of the day, were we supposed to learn anything? I don't know. And in that sense, it's almost just like Kevin Smith is a hardworking man, as Kurtis likes to bring up, who's had a lot of success in his life, and he's just kind of doing whatever he wants to do, and I can appreciate that to an extent. But I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, he talks about that in Burn in Hell, going into the next movie, Cop Out, which we're getting ready to talk about, that he directed that because he was at a point in his life where that's what he could do. He could direct movies that other people wrote and just show up and direct them and kind of show everybody what to do and make a good living doing it. And he decided after that he didn't want to do it. And it also, he talks about how it helped him make Red State, because he got money from Red State because someone said, I didn't read the script, but I saw your name next to Bruce Willis's in a movie. All I needed to see, here's some money. So he's definitely maybe trying to find his way here. I don't know. It seems seems with this Tusk, Red State type of feel thing, that's what he wants to do now. He's going to make 2 more of these Tusk movies, I guess. He's going to make Clerks 3. Hopefully that has a more View Askew feel than this other stuff, because again, we've reached the end of the movies that he wrote, correct? Cop Out's the only movie he didn't write that he's directed, correct?
Right, and he is a great they say 3 people can tell a story in a movie: the writer, the director, and the editor. And I think he's best at that, with the exception of maybe Mallrats, which he didn't edit. And then once we saw his cut, again, as we talked about on last week's episode, that stuff wasn't really necessary. But, what do you got to say about Cop Out, for sure?
Well, just before we get that, these are the movies written. I don't understand what happened to the great characters he wrote in the View Askew movies. I know you disagree, Tony, and that's fine, but I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me. But that's the end of the movies he wrote. In 2010, he directed Cop Out. This movie is terrible. This movie is awful. It's not funny. It's just, there's nothing redeeming about it whatsoever. I have nothing good to say about it except that I did not watch it again for this.
That just sounds like what you would have heard about from everyone else before actually seeing the movie. I'm not sticking up for this movie, but it's better than what, I mean, the reviews and everything were just dogging on this when it came out. I remember
And rightfully so once I saw it.
But it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. It wasn't the worst thing either. I mean,
it was The Room, but it was pretty bad.
I think The Room is better, in fact. But
What?
Andy likes The Room.
No, he doesn't. There's no way.
Talk about The Room another time.
Okay, that's ridiculous. But I didn't know this movie had such a bad reputation. I guess I'm not on top of Rotten Tomatoes like Kurtis is. You know, they're boys. And all.
I want to ask you this because I listened to this podcast a couple of times. You're always talking that Kurtis is like butt buddies with Rotten Tomatoes. Where does that come from?
Just because I've brought it up a couple of times. But Tony now, every movie they review, he brings up the Rotten Tomato score, whether I'm on the show or not. So obviously it's his thing now.
Well, no, it's because they're boys, and I want to make Kurtis feel like he's part of the show even when he's not there. I know he can't do it every week, but he's part of that show.
I do think Rotten Tomatoes is an interesting thing where it's not just like how good this movie is, it's how many people like this movie. Not necessarily that they loved it or just slightly recommend it. We've talked about this before. I've brought it up a couple of times. The main time I brought it up was when we reviewed Lucy, and I couldn't believe that many people liked the movie. Even if they liked it a little bit or liked it a lot, it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Well, what y'all are forgetting is a few years ago, we started this tradition that ended up to not be a tradition where we were going to do a list of movies every Christmas. And we did a list of the 25 funniest movies we thought we had. And after it was all said and done, and all five of us, us and our other brother and our dad had submitted our list,
forgot about this.
Kurtis came back with all this Rotten Tomato mumbo jumbo and was using it as science to prove why his list was the best. And so that is why I'm always on this thing about there being boys. Okay.
Okay.
I thought Andy won that though, didn't he? I think Andy won the best reviewed list.
It doesn't matter because you were acting like it was like science. So
okay, all right.
No, it's all opinions. I would be biased and say that I probably have a better taste in movies than y'all two, but that's because.
All right, well, Tony, you never actually got to tell us what you thought about Cop Out.
Well, again, I don't mind it. I would never set out to watch it, but if I was on a plane and it was on, I wouldn't walk out. I'd probably just catch parts of it. I think that Adam Brody and Kevin Pollak, I like their characters in this. Especially what I love the most about this movie is not on the screen, and that's that Kevin Smith went from this guy just in love with Bruce Willis to this guy that absolutely hates Bruce Willis, and I think that that's one of the most fascinating things about it. So a lot of good came out of this, but Tracy Morgan is Tracy Morgan in it, and Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis in it, and it's just okay. I don't hate it, don't love it.
And there was definitely no chemistry between the two whatsoever.
Yeah, there's no. I won't say that there's anything that's just awful, terrible about this movie, but there's also nothing that's good about it. There's no redeeming quality to it. It's not funny. None of the actors relate to each other. Again, no interesting characters, although he didn't write this movie, so not Kevin Smith's fault this time. Just there's nothing positive about it.
Well, just did you see It's Deep Impact? Did you see the other guys?
No, I never saw that.
Okay. Andy?
I don't know what you're talking about. What?
The other guys was the Will Ferrell, Marky Mark.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
So this got compared to, because they came out about the same time.
Did they?
Yeah.
That's why it said it's Deep Impact, because it's the Deep Impact, Armageddon.
Oh, okay.
Volcano, Dante's Peak.
We make movie references sometimes on this show. But
I didn't get the correlation, but
okay.
But I liked the other guys. I thought it was pretty funny.
I never saw it.
All right, there you go. It was okay. I actually probably prefer this one. Neither of them are great, though. I just was curious.
What? If you had to guess, what was Will Ferrell's IQ in it?
I bet he played an idiot man-child.
No! Will Ferrell?
Maybe not as much of one in this.
Were you ever a Will Ferrell fan?
He's good in Old School.
Okay, I don't know.
Step Brothers is one of my favorite movies.
Yes.
Yeah, I was done with him, and then I saw Step Brothers, and I really liked him in that. But
We'll do the Will Ferrell episode never. So,
because we could never get way
All right,
too serious on him.
anything else to say about Kevin Smith movies?
I think the one thing worth pointing out is of all the bad stuff that came out of Tusk, the good thing was, and maybe this isn't true, maybe this is just some spin he's putting on it, is he did finally get the funding for Clerks 3. He's been talking about this story for several years now about how it is Dante and Randall in their 40s, whereas Clerks was in their 20s, Clerks 2 was in their 30s, this is them in their 40s. And I'm super excited to see that. Can't wait for it to happen.
I keep reading that too, and it doesn't really explain how that's the case. Like, I read 3 stories on that, and they all just said, like, because this failed, I got to make Clerks 3, and it never really explains what that means.
Again, it seemed shady. That's why I kind of said, like, maybe it's not true, but whatever. I'm glad he got
I don't know. But you see in all these movies lately, like, the opening credits, there's like 90 different production companies for one movie, and that's because I think that they're just putting a little bit of money here, they're just gathering money wherever they can find it and sharing the profits and sharing the glory with it. So I can see money isn't as for funding a movie isn't as easy to come by as it used to be, because one big slip in a film studio is bankrupt essentially. So that's why I get so pissed off about Tusk, because out of how hard it is to find funding for a movie, you found funding to make this thing, which is absolutely pointless.
And you're going to make it a shared universe, the Tusk universe. Probably just as good as the ViewAskew universe.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think that's it for the movies then for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Clerks 3 just to see... I'm kind of hoping he finds his way back, not to continue the ViewAskew universe, but just that realizes that he does have a voice in that genre, and there's different things you can do in that genre, and you don't just have to make... I don't even know what that genre is. If you want to call it the dick and fart joke genre, you can, but I just kind of hope he finds... I'm not saying he's got to do that for the rest of his life, but I hope he kind of realizes when that movie comes out, like, this is what I'm good at, and... finds his way, because like Andy said, I think he's having trouble with that right now, but we'll see which is better, Clerks 3 or Tusk 2, whatever that's called.
You think Brian O'Halloran's going to be in Clerks 3?
No, he's being replaced by Breckenmeyer.
Justin Long.
Johnny Depp's going to play him. You won't even be able to tell it's Johnny Depp. All right, well, we're going to get into some of the other stuff Kevin Smith's doing. And Tony, you're a big fan of the Schmodcast, I've listened to some of the stuff, some of the Fat Man on Batman I've enjoyed. Listened to a couple of others. It's not really my thing, but you're a big fan, so why don't you give us the lowdown on that?
Yeah, Fat Man on Batman was actually my first introduction to podcasts. Somebody was like, here's Kevin Smith, a director I know you love, and he's talking about Batman, something I know you love, and I know you love Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and this is like leading up to The Dark Knight Rises when this show started. So, I definitely, that's what got me into podcasts, and then I picked up, Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, the Smodcast with Scott Mosier, as well as Hollywood Babylon, which is probably my favorite Kevin Smith podcast. And I really do think that he feels like this is where he's supposed to be, that this is his gift that he has to share. And I kind of agree with that. His podcasts are way better than any movie he's really made in a while. So maybe he's spot on just doing 7 podcasts a week.
To me, and I haven't listened to as much as you, I've tried to get into a couple of them. To me, it's like, all these Q&A things he does, even with Kevin Smith, Burn in Hell, whatever, they're edited down, and I feel like that's more for me. Give me the good stuff, and then it's really good, and then the other stuff I just really don't care that much about, and I don't have that much time to dedicate to this mini podcast when I don't think like 70% of it is worth listening to. Again, just my opinion. I understand a lot of people like it, and that's fine.
And
but
I'm kind of on the same thing with Kurtis here. I've never listened to a Kevin Smith podcast per se. I think I listened to one about the holes in Dark Knight Rises, which there are many.
Don't get started.
but to me, Kevin Smith is just everywhere, and he's always has an opinion on something. And I just, I feel like I get enough Kevin Smith just in my regular day-to-day life that I don't need to like hear every single thought that he may have one way or the other. Because I like Kevin Smith, but too much of anything is just too much. And
I like that you act like you're having a tough time getting him out of your life. Like you just you can't get away from him. He's just everywhere you turn. Like everyone's having this problem.
But seriously, he is though, and I don't care what you say. He's everywhere. And that's good because that's good for him. He's still somehow being relevant all these years later, which is great. Whether it's in podcasting or whatever he's doing, but he has an opinion, and he's always, if he can get in front of a camera or in front of anything, he's going to do it and talk. And so I feel like I have enough of Kevin Smith's life that I can kind of go on and really just enjoy his movies when they come out, or not enjoy them, as the case Tuss may be. And not really have to delve into everything else. And I like I read comic books, so like I like that he's into comics and he has those kind of opinions. But I wish I could invest into that, but I don't know.
To me, the podcasting thing and even the Q&As, which I do enjoy, again when they're edited down to the stuff that's interesting. To me, maybe I'm wrong, and if you say I'm wrong, I'll listen. Tony, you probably know better than me. But all this like interaction with the fans, like it's something I respect and even somewhat appreciate, even though I haven't personally got into it. But I also think it's really created, to me, what is a problem now with Kevin Smith, which is this giant sycophant fan base that just wants to suck his dick over everything he does, and to me, this just represents a huge switch in Kevin Smith where even if you go back and watch An Evening with Kevin Smith or just anything, the old commentaries on the old movies, this is a guy who, and he even talks about it, even Kevin Smith, he's very self-deprecating. He would call himself fat, so when I can't say he knows. Same thing with some of the, bad directing crap he got. He would say, I don't move the camera, and some of the other criticisms people had of him. And somehow he went from that, which I totally, sympathize with and appreciate because I'm the same way. I think we all are kind of a little bit. You have to be in this family. To just being like this super butthurt guy who gets so upset when someone doesn't like one of his movies now. I mean, some of the comments he's made about people who didn't like Red State or didn't like Cop Out are just so insane. Like he's basically telling people, like, you're not allowed to not like these movies because I made them, and if you didn't like them, that's your problem, and blah, 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 blah. Just so crazy. He's just turned, and I really think it's the sycophant culture of all these people that come to these Q&As and just tell him everything he does is great, and he talks to people on his podcast, and they tell him everything he does is great. And, I don't see what's wrong with just being honest about what's good and what's bad, Roger Ebert style. And I think that's really hurt him. And I think that's maybe why some of these movies are not as good as what we think they could be or should be, is because of this whole shift he's had.
He's always like, I don't need critics, and I'm just going to do it my way. This is the new way.
That's fine.
Yeah, it is. But
if someone doesn't like your movie, they don't like your movie. They're allowed to not like your movie.
Absolutely. And I always hear, I've seen him in so many interviews where he's like, I came from nowhere, and everyone I grew up with or everyone I know, I live in a mansion compared to anyone that I've worked hard, and he has. He absolutely, absolutely has.
Mad respect for the man.
It almost seems like once he started smoking weed on the regular that he got so productive. I don't know how.
I think it's just my opinion, just my theory. It's the sycophant fans that just blow smoke up his ass over everything he does now. He's done a complete 180 from Fat Kev Smith. I joke about myself too. All these people tell me how great I am, and I totally buy it. And if you don't agree, then that means there's a problem with you.
I just kind of think you're a little off base here. Some of what you said is pretty spot on, but and the weed thing I definitely agree with. I think the weed has made him much more sensitive, but I also think he like you'll hear people talk about like how Jeff Ross is one of the biggest insult comics, but he's also one of the easiest people to hurt his feelings, and I just think that's kind of part of being an artist, right? Like you put yourself out there and then people talk about it. I get emails about my show and my opinions, and I'm cool with it. I don't really mind if somebody craps on my podcast, but this podcast, my podcast, I love it, but it's not my life. I have a job outside of this podcast, and if somebody craps on my performance at my job, when I feel like I do a great job and I put a lot into it, it does bother me, and I am a little sensitive about it. So I can relate with him in that way. I mean, I think you're making a bigger deal out of him having opinions on people having opinions than the case really is.
This is something that bothers. Like, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a Jamie Kennedy documentary on criticism. Have you
hecklers?
Yeah, but it's really about criticism.
Yeah, I saw it.
It's just all. You've seen it, Tony?
Yeah. And
it's just all super butthurtness about
the son of the mask, essentially.
Yeah, I just don't understand their point about if you want to. I mean, I guess like you have to draw the line somewhere. They're saying you can't criticize what they're doing, and I guess maybe I'm kind of saying you can't criticize me criticizing you. I don't know, but to me, just like Tony said, if you make art, that's what art is. It gets criticized. It gets dissected by 3 non-Marty Scorsese's right here on this podcast. That's just what happens. And to just, again, if he'd been butthurt like that his whole career, maybe that would be one thing. But this is a guy who totally admitted his faults on Mallrats, admitted where it went wrong, still loves the movie, still speaks fondly of it, but can tell you, that's all I say. Like, I don't say you got to completely love everything, or completely hate everything. Just be honest about it. And if something doesn't work for me, I can say that, and you can either take it for what it is, or, I mean, when Tony started doing 22MWU, and the first couple of times I listened to it, I called him and told him what I thought, and I gave him some, what I thought were notes. And I had never done a podcast before. I'd listened to plenty, though, and Tony get butthurt and tell me, screw you don't know what you're talking about. He took my advice on a couple things and not so much on some other ones.
Well,
and
you also called me one-on-one. You didn't like go out on your podcast and be like, my brother Tony has this podcast and it completely sucks, yo. It wasn't. It's 2 different forums.
Well, that's fair. But you get what I'm saying. Like, I just don't. Again, like, is Roger Ebert not supposed to publish his review of Red State because it's not satisfactory enough?
Well, I just kind of disagree with you. Like, Kevin Smith, like I think once the Tusk publicity is over with, and I think he'll kind of talk about that it wasn't a great hit. And the reason I say that is because on the show Hollywood Babylon, every week, I can't think of what the segment's called, but it's like movies that will suck. That's what it's called. They talk about movies that will suck, and every week he's like, please don't be Tusk. Please don't be Tusk. Please don't be Tusk. So, I mean, I think maybe you have a small sample size, and maybe it has to do with that Adam Carolla podcast.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that. But even before that, I already thought that, and I had never seen that Burn in Hell until this past week. And just went on this huge rant in it that just kind of, and even some parts of the rant I agreed with him on, about how people don't build people up enough, and they ask why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing a podcast? People ask me that, and because I like talking about movies with my brother. I don't care if anyone listens to it. But some of the points he had, I totally got. But the gist of his rant was just the same thing, like, I've done this, so if you don't like it, that's your problem. Well, yeah, it is, but like, I just don't understand why you're getting so upset about it. Not everyone's going to like everything you do. They haven't your whole career. It didn't bother you 15 years ago. Why does it bother you so much now?
And I think that's a good point, because Tone has a point as far as, you don't want someone going to your job and criticizing you. I mean,
I don't care, but I understand people who do.
Okay, but to put yourself and to put your art, which is essentially your soul, one way or the other. I'm not saying Tusk was his soul or whatever, but to put your art out there, which is a part of who you are, to have that criticized is them directly criticizing you as a person.
Okay, well,
and that doesn't feel good to a lot of people.
One, I'm different in that regard. I do not mind being criticized. I'll tell you when I agree with you. Two, but to that, besides that, again, if you create art and you put it out there, it's going to be criticized. Like, you just know that going in.
And he should know that by now.
But my point is, it didn't bother him 15 years ago. Why does it bother him so much
and
now?
That's what I want, and that's a good question,
well,
I think. Because
I think part of it probably has to do with, for Red State, he had stepped out of dealing with production companies. He was taking this on the road. He was using Twitter and social media to spread the word. And I think he probably felt like he had tried to take all of the haters out of it, and he was just going to reach people that would enjoy this movie. So maybe that kind of a situation had something to do with it as well.
To me, to go back to your Adam Carolla thing, like, so I don't know that we can sum this up, because it is a lot of he said. But if you ever want to listen to it, you can find it on YouTube. You can probably find it on Adam Carolla. Tony and I are both fans of the Adam Carolla podcast. I don't listen so much anymore. Tony still does, but a couple of years ago, maybe even longer than that, Adam and Kevin were going to have like a show together, some sort of, I don't want to say anything wrong. So
like a man show type?
No,
thing?
it was like, they kept calling it like TMZ, but not TMZ or something like that. I don't know. It was going to be a show together. It doesn't really matter. And there was like some miscommunication, and because of that, Kevin Smith said he wouldn't work with Adam Carolla, and the show fell through. Well, then, like, Kevin Smith went on his podcast and said this, and Adam Carolla went on his podcast and said this, and then they ended up getting together on Adam's podcast and talking it out. And it's not the most enjoyable listen, because they do just go back and forth on several points. But my whole thing with when I listened to that was like, yeah, Adam's probably not being 100% truthful in everything he's saying. Maybe he is. I don't know. But my whole point of listening to that was like, I did get basically what Adam said, and the other people who they have to say it because they work for Adam Carolla. But the Kevin Smith was just being like super butthurt over really what was nothing. And so it even goes past the judgment of his art. Like, this was just, you have to listen to it to get what we're going to talk about here, me and Tony. And Andy didn't hear it, so he's going to kind of be left out here. But it was just, he was so upset about a phone call that may or may not have been returned, and he thought, or an email, and it was just so ridiculous, so over the top, and he was so upset about it that he canceled the show. And I was just blown away. That really was the first interaction I had. I didn't know about all this. Like, I'm mad that people didn't like Red State and stuff. I was just so blown away that he got so upset over that and was so butthurt over it.
Well, Kurtis gave me his spin on this and told me I should go find it on YouTube, and I did, and I listened to it, and I basically what it boils down to for me is it's Kevin Smith saying, look, I thought we were boys, and we're not boys, and I would like to just try and find some common ground here and be the bigger adult. But it's Adam being just a jerk and being like, well, this and that and this.
Now, here's what I'll agree with. When they did that, yes, I agree with you. When they got there, Adam got him and his cronies, Bald Brian and Allison, to gang up on him, and I totally agree with you on that. What I'm talking about is what happened before that, where they had some both of these are very busy men. They both have lots of things going on, and Kevin Smith was all upset that Adam Carolla didn't call him right back or return an email. And maybe Adam wasn't 100% truthful and he didn't get it, or he forgot, whatever. I mean, sometimes I forget to respond to an email. Sometimes I email Tony and he doesn't email me back right away. I don't call up and say I'm never doing the show again. Like, it was just so ridiculous that he canceled that show that they were going to do and said, I'll never work with Adam Carolla over a missed call or not responding to an email.
Okay, well, sometimes people get heated in the moment, but for him to go on Adam Carolla's show and try and find some sorts of common ground, and he was really honest about the way he felt and what he felt he had done wrong and what he felt he could have done differently, and his regrets, and that if he could have taken it back and had a conversation at that time, he would have done it differently, and that showed growth as to where Adam was just like, you cost me money and get involved, Brian.
On that part of it, I'll agree with you on that part of it. Adam was kind of a jerk on that, and Kevin Smith was trying to be a nice guy. I agree 100%. That isn't what I found interesting about it. I know Adam Carolla is a jerk. I know Kevin Smith's a nice guy. What I found interesting about it was how butthurt he got over not returning a phone call that Adam said he never got. Do we know if he ever got it? Don't know. Again, this happens to regular folks. So to two guys who, have a lot going on business-wise, a lot going on family-wise, totally understandable that one phone call or one email would not be responded to. And he was so upset by it that he canceled what they were working on. And Tony's correct. He did kind of come back and say that he did take some ownership of it, but it was just such an overreaction that was my first exposure to the new I Get Butthurt Kevin Smith that is totally anti everything I saw from him throughout his early career, where I'm Fat Kev Smith, I'm everybody's buddy, and if you want to make fun of me, it's real cool. If you don't like my movie, that's all right. I know maybe you'll like the next one. I just total change for me, and I just wonder where that come from. Again, I think it comes from the sycophant fan base.
It could be and I've seen it too. I don't know. I can't speak for the podcast and the Adam Carolla thing, but I've seen it too. Like the whole Southwest Airlines thing. That was a humiliating experience. It was completely unnecessary. But to watch it Evening with Kevin Smith, as I just recently rewatched, it doesn't seem like the same.
It doesn't. It seems like a totally different guy. He would have. If that came on, he would have told the story about it and made fun of it. And he did do that to some extent, but he also wouldn't have pitched a giant fit about it and gone on Twitter and got all his sycophants. I just think this fan base that he's created, these people who suck his dick over everything he does and go on and tell him that Red State's the greatest movie they ever saw. I really think that's changed him for the worse.
Curtis makes the perfect decision in every moment. Curtis, he never makes a mistake when it comes to stuff like that. He always does the right thing the first time, and Kevin Smith just isn't like that, and Curtis is going to have a problem with that.
No, I can't.
Again, we're talking about someone who's done a complete 180, someone who seems like a completely different person.
Well, I mean, he was pretty much saying on those things, like, my whole life I've cut people off from making fun of me so that they won't make fun of me. I don't like being made fun of. So it's not a hard stretch.
That's not what he says.
It's not a hard It's not a hard stretch to believe that after a couple decades of that bull crap, he would be like, I just want to be me, and I want to smoke weed, and I want to be sensitive about stuff. It's just not a stretch.
That it's his success that has led it up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The success combined with people who tell him that everything he does is great.
He was more successful at the time of Evening with Kevin Smith than...
Okay, but that was the beginning of the success. Like, I mean, these things don't click. You don't... It's not Jon Favreau after he finds out Iron Man is the #1 movie at the box office. Like, it takes a little time to develop an ego, especially when you don't have one like he didn't have.
He had sold Clerks 10 years prior.
He's at a position where he can do whatever he wants to do. He can go on these Q&As, make a lot of money doing that. He can do his podcast, make a lot of money doing that.
And I applaud him for it.
Exactly.
I got nothing but respect and admiration for that.
Absolutely. But I really think that he's at a point where he doesn't really need anybody. He's developed that fan base over the last 20 years.
To me, I think of the behind the scenes Phantom Menace stuff where it's George Lucas talking and everyone telling him how great he is. If you go back to the original Star Wars trilogy, there were a lot of people involved. A lot of people will tell you his wife at the time was heavily involved in the movies and made him like change his mind on stuff. He had 2 people direct 2 of the other movies. It was very much not just him, and they made 3 great movies. Then it came time for this, and if you've ever seen like clips or actually watched the behind-the-scenes footage of Phantom Menace, it's nothing but yes men telling George Lucas everything is great. Well, and he earned that? Maybe. Did it make good movies? No, it didn't. And I think there's a similar type thing here.
Everything y'all just said about Kevin Smith, though, applies to Adam Carolla as well. Is he gave the middle finger to everyone and started his pirate ship and does his own podcast so he can say whatever he wants and doesn't have to answer to anyone.
I think he's got his shit. Road Hard isn't out yet, right?
Yeah, it comes out February.
if it's terrible, all his fans will tell him how great it is, and he'll believe it. I'm not saying this couldn't happen to anyone. Like he made it. He made it first movie. In my opinion, it's a good movie. I really like it. The Hammer. If this movie's not good, I'll say it's not good, and I'm a fan of Adam Carolla.
I'm a huge fan of Adam Carolla.
But I guarantee you, he'll have a bunch of fans who, even if it's a piece of crap, will say it's the greatest thing they ever saw.
Well, you realize Transformers 4 made over $1 billion, right? People like crap.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. The thing that just drives me nuts with Kevin Smith is if he had been like that his whole life, it would have been one thing. But to me, it's just a completely different change. And in the same time we see the change, we see also a move to not movies that aren't as good as the movies he used to make.
All right, that's fair, but not a stretch in my opinion. But I think we probably have exhausted this.
I agree. Does anyone want to talk about anything else Kevin Smith's done? Andy mentioned briefly that he's done some TV shows, he's written some comic books. I'm not familiar with this stuff. If anybody else wants to talk about it, you guys can have at it again. I just have nothing but respect for the guy doing all these different things and doing what he loves. Nothing but props for him in that area of it.
Well, I wanted to Tony, we can talk about. Curtis, I don't think you watch Comic Book Man. I watch it on Netflix or whatever.
I do not watch it.
But it's almost exactly like Pawn Stars, but with comic books. And I'm a comic book fan, so I can kind of get it. It's so scripted and over the top and ridiculous, but it's enjoyable.
That doesn't sound like a show that would be like Pawn Stars.
If it had Chum Lee on it, it would be a better show. But it's a pretty good show. But Andy's exactly right. It's scripted and it's very Pawn Star-esque, but it's about comic books and they have cool guests. And I think the third season just came out on Netflix. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's supposed to have some really great guests.
Well, yeah, I mean, I liked what they were doing with they were bringing in like Scott Snyder, not the wrestler, but the guy who's writing Batman for the New 52.
There's a wrestler named Scott Snyder.
What?
There's a wrestler named Scott Snyder.
No, Steiner isn't that. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
I'm not the wrestling.
Just so we didn't have to correct it on another episode.
Yeah, Scott Steiner.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Right.
Excuse. But anyway,
that guy's still alive?
I don't know. I would have no clue.
He didn't explode from steroid use?
He's good.
There's no way.
He's still wrestling on the indie circuit. But anyways, back to what Andy was saying.
But anyway, and they were and it was just a quick little thing, but it was cool to me. It's like, oh, so that's what that guy looks like. And yeah, I like what he does. So, they kind of throw in stuff that appeals to me as a comic book kind of geek, I guess. But it's not, they're not recreating the wheel, but it's enjoyable enough, and Kevin Smith is enjoyable enough on it.
Spoilers? Anybody seen Spoilers?
I saw a couple of the episodes. I thought it was a really interesting idea. I would have liked to seen more and maybe some more notable movies. So a lot of the movies they did, I didn't really care for, but and then
what do they do?
They just review movies essentially. I've seen a couple episodes. Good tone.
He would take them to see the movie. And then right after they saw the movie, they would all go into a room and talk about it.
So is it just like a bunch of jagoffs, or is it three Martin Scorsese's like us?
It's a whole room of just normal people, I guess.
Okay. Not people who can make better movies than Kevin Smith. Like
you weren't there. And again, it was a pretty good show. It probably didn't get the run it should have, and it probably would have been better. They're coming to AMC soon. They're going to be doing a Hollywood Babylon show, which is going to be like a spinoff of the podcast he does with Ralph Garman. And that podcast, again, is one of my absolute favorite, but it does not translate to television. Everything on it is super vulgar. I mean, it's not going to work on TV, but I'll check it out.
All right.
Well, let me ask you this. As far as I don't know, I put Kevin Smith and Chris Hardwick kind of in the same boat. Who do you think is more annoying? Just as far as their...
I put them in the same... Well, here's where I don't... Well, here's where I won't put them in the same boat is I actually like stuff Kevin Smith's done. Or I will put them in the same boat as I do think both of those guys are hardworking. I think they're doing what they love, and I respect them, like I've already said for Kevin Smith 3 times over the course of these 2 parts. But I don't know why we're talking about Chris Hardwick now, but I'm not a fan of his.
Yeah,
I love Singled Out, but that's about where that ends for me. He's not even. I know that he's got this big thing going, but I don't watch The Walking Dead. He's just not on my radar.
Yeah, indeed, and like Adam Carolla is not on mine, but I do. They do podcasts, and they're very entrepreneurial in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I see like Chris Hardwick's had a lot of success, and I can see Kevin Smith, if he's not even so much in the face of everybody already, that he would be even more popular than he was even in the '90s, if he goes that route. As far as like, I don't know, I just see a correlation between those two.
Well,
I'm just super excited to see Clerks 3 come out and see where we go from there.
I think a show with Adam Carolla and Kevin Smith, if it had been, not just tons and tons of input and really just those two guys talking about stuff and not overly scripted, I think it would have been phenomenal. But I guess we'll never know.
You don't think it would have just been Adam Carolla beating up on Kevin Smith? That's basically what their podcast together was. I agree with you on that 100%, but that's not what I took away from it. But Anyway, we already talked about that. In fact, I think we talked about pretty much everything Kevin Smith related here. We talked about what he's done, what he's doing, what he's going to do. We're starting to repeat ourselves. So why don't we just kind of wrap it up and give our closing thoughts. Start with you, Tony.
Pretty much just what I said last week. I'm a huge fan. He hasn't lost me yet. He's one of those 10 people on my list that I'll support whatever they do and check it out. If he was on Dancing with the Stars, I would watch Dancing with the Stars. That's the biggest compliment I can give someone. So,
Andy.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Smith will always have a place in my heart, and I'm always like rooting for him. I am a little, as of late, a little sick of him though. I think he's kind of too.
He's all up in your business, so I mean, why wouldn't you be? You can't get him out of your life.
But seriously though, it seems like he's always somewhere saying something, and I mean, we're all opinionated people. It's good to have opinions. But I respect the guy, and I've had a lot of fun with his movies, and I'll continue to support him when and if, he puts out something that's really awesome. And even I've seen the not so great movies. I don't know. I'm just, we'll see how Clerks 3 might be what changes it for me and just be a diehard fan again. But, I'm just kind of on the back burner with Kevin Smith. He's there and he has a place in my heart. So it's hard to rag on the guy, but I'm just kind of, I don't know, moving on, I guess.
I'm somewhere between you guys. I'm not just going to, I'm not going to be one of those sycophant fans who just, and I'm not saying Tony is, because Tony will be critical of stuff. He doesn't think everything Kevin Smith does is the greatest thing ever. But I'm not going to go see something just because it's Kevin Smith. That said, again, appreciate the hell out of the guy, respect the hell out of the guy. The guy made some great movies that I've obviously given high praise to. And, hey, I just hope he keeps on doing what he's doing. I would like to see him do more what he was doing is what he is doing, but I'm not going to complain too much. The guy gave me a lot of stuff that I still enjoy watching, and I really thank him for it. And I got nothing but love for Big Kev Smith. All right. Well, for our last segment, we do something a little bit different. We have a listener email, and it comes from listener Kyle. And it says, "Hey, Kurtis, longtime fan of the podcast. I tend to agree with your opinions over Tony's."
Boo.
Thanks, Kyle. Great email.
Long time fan. How long is this thing?
We're glad you're a longtime fan of our third episode here, and that was a great email, and I agree. My opinions are better than Tony's, and that's all the time we have for... What? Is there more to the email?
Go ahead and read some more of it.
I'm not gonna read this, but basically this is Tony's friend Kyle, who Tony put up to once again, griping at me for my Guardians of the Galaxy comments. And look, I'm going to be fair here, Tony. I went back and I listened to our review. So for those who don't know, Tony and I did a revisit on 22MWU. of Guardians of the Galaxy, where I kind of gave my review after he and Steve and BJ had already talked about it the week before, or a few days earlier. And you know what? I'm going to say I didn't explain myself well in that. So my problem is I do have a problem with, and maybe I'm not wording it right, I do not think the movie explained its universe well. That said, I gave some examples that seemed like nitpicking, and they were, but I was just giving them as examples. I wasn't saying I needed everything to explain to me. I was just saying I would like some stuff explained to me, and I didn't think the movie did that. I thought it left a lot of things open. And again, I've said this before too. You don't have to explain everything all the time. And Kyle's email here actually brings up some good points about how the Star Wars prequels went back and explained stuff no one wanted explained. And you know what? I agree. So that's why I do want stuff explained here, because whereas Star Wars, the original trilogy, set kind of the precedent, these other movies went back and rewrote that precedent and changed stuff and didn't follow what the other movies had. Whereas in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's gone to great lengths in the earlier movies to explain their universe, explain the rules, explain how these characters and where they come from interact with each other. It's gone to lengths to do that. That's what these movies have done. And I will agree that as they've gone on, that they've kind of done that less and less, and it's become less serious than maybe it started out to be with the original Iron Man movie. I mean, this isn't supposed to be a Batman Begins Dark Knight level realism, but it's not supposed to be Dark Knight Returns goofy realism either. It's somewhere in between. That's just a shot at Dark Knight Rises. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you didn't even say the name of the movie right. You said Dark Knight Returns, which is one of the most famous comic books of all time.
Sorry, Dark Knight Rises.
Okay. All right. Get your crap together.
That movie's not worth remembering the name of. All right. To get back on point, so Kyle's other example was the Doctor Strange, and if you listen to our Marvel episode, I said we talked about how if Doctor Strange came out and it was in universe that it wasn't going to be an origin story, and I said I didn't have a problem with that, but I did think that since the universe had established that magic is not a real thing and anything we perceive as magic is just technology that we don't understand, that if they are going to have Doctor Strange be a magic character like he is in the comic books, that there should be some sort of explanation for that. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes of the movie or anything like that. I just said that. Well, Kyle took offense to that because Tony told him to, and Kyle's he's allowed to do that. That's fine. And hey, I even agree with him. You don't always got to explain everything, but when a universe sets itself up to say we are going to explain things and we are going to tell you things and then stops doing it, I feel I can say, I think you should do this. Now, all that being said, I liked this movie. I gave it a good review. I said many good things about it. I said it's my favorite of the Marvel movies, of which I am a huge fan of. I simply gave one thing, or really two, because I didn't like the villain that much either. Again, because they didn't explain him well either, and that kind of folded into my whole universe thing because it didn't explain the whole, again, to my liking, because I'm greedy, the whole backstory about where these different factions came from. Again, you can go back and listen to that.
Yeah, and
hey, guess what? You can't put a gun to someone's head and say, hey, you have to like this. You have to think this way. That bothered me. So I'm going to tell you it bothered me. I didn't say the movie's bad because of it. If I had said the movie was bad because of it, then maybe you would have some sort of gripe. But I love the movie. I loved it more than you, I think, from the way we've rated these movies. So this has got to stop. We got to put an end to this greedy Kurtis over Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay,
I know in this family we run things into the ground and we make jokes last forever. Tom Swallows. But this one's got to end because it's getting annoying and it's bad pod. It's bad pod.
Let me just say, you're really going to hate the things Kyle has to say about this after I tell him what to say. But also, I didn't tell him.
According to this, he's a longtime listener and #1 fan, so of course he's going to listen to this, right?
Yeah, he'll hear this, and he's also heard our unaired pilot that we may release someday. So he has been a fan of the show longer than anyone else.
Well, Kyle, we do thank you for listening, and I know I'm being a little harsh on you, but I also know Tony put you up to it. I'm not saying those aren't your words. I understand they are, but I also know Tony was telling you, like, hey, nope, Kurtis is being super greedy on Guardians of the Galaxy. I haven't brought it up in a while. How about you bring it up for me?
Nope, not the case at all. He started texting me about it, and I said, just email him about it. And it was completely his own idea.
Well, again, he has a good point about Star Wars. Again, but he's not looking at it the right way. The Star Wars prequels went back and changed what was already set. These universe has established itself. It said, we're going to explain things. We're going to show how all these characters interact with each other. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. We talked about that when we talked about the problems of a shared universe. So there's going to be issues. All I said was that I like some of these things explained, that they've established a universe where they explain. And again, that's an inherent problem of a shared universe, because once you start kind of saying this is how we're going to have this universe and you start changing it, that can make people who like to nitpick, like me, get a little upset. That said, I gave the movie 4 out of 5. I said it's my favorite Marvel movie. I said even the second time I went back and watched it, I loved it even more and cared less about that stuff. So you can't put a gun to my head and say, don't care about the fact they didn't explain the universe to your liking.
Okay.
That's just my feeling. That's what I took away from it. It didn't do it for me right there in that area.
Well, you can't, after 29 years of being in this family, expect me to not beat the horse until it's dust, okay?
Again, I understand that, but this isn't our family. This is also pod, and it's bad pod. It's bad pod to keep beating that dead horse.
All right. Greedy and impatient.
It's just a callback is what it is.
All right, so in all seriousness, Kyle, thank you for your email. It was thought out, thought out. That's why we wanted to take a whole segment here to talk about it. I don't necessarily agree with everything you said, and you can write me back if you want, and I'll respond to you. Maybe Tony will get you on the. Maybe we can do a conversation about it at some point. I don't know. We'll see what we got coming up. But to anyone else who listens, thanks for listening to this. Hey, make sure you check out Tony's podcast, 22MWU. That's right, Tony?
22MWU. I think you've been on there enough times that you should know the name of it. What is this called? What? Too serious? No. So this week, me and Kurtis are going to take a look at To Be Decay. We're going to also take a look at a movie called Cop and a Half. And then also we're gonna watch a movie in theaters that we haven't quite decided on.
I'm looking forward to it. So.
And I just wanted to add that I also do the music for that podcast as well.
Yeah, I don't know why Kurtis didn't give you credit for that on the first episode.
I think I said both shows. If I didn't, I'm sorry. I meant to.
I think we get a few more listeners over there, and you're a little more well known. But we appreciate it.
We're still working on it over here, but I appreciate Tony coming to do this with me again. We really appreciate Andy coming and joining us. We'll have to have him back sometime.
Hey, thanks for having me, seriously.
And hey, make sure you subscribe on Pocketcast and iTunes or whatever other app you may use to both 22MWU and Way Too Serious. And the next episode, we're going to be doing. Tony and I are going to be talking about season 10 of South Park. It's my favorite. It's my favorite season. We're just going to talk about the whole episodes and just kind of how the show's progressed from there. So make sure to turn in next time. It's going to be our first TV episode, so a little bit different maybe. So make sure you check it out. Again, make sure you check out 22MW. Thanks for joining us. See ya.